Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. I am Joan Benz, the program coordinator for Sharp Again Naturally. We would like to note that the information in this presentation is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Our information is intended to empower individuals, their families, and healthcare professionals who want to collaborate in the most effective ways on this journey to health and well-being. Please see a licensed and qualified medical professional for your medical needs. Thank you again for joining us, and I'd like to welcome and introduce our speaker, Steve Ledvina. Steve is a national board certified health and wellness coach, founder of knowingalz.com, and our Sharp Again board chair. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box and we'll answer them during the Q&A at the end of the program. Welcome, Steve. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Joan. Welcome everyone, and thank you all for joining us. I think this is a good crowd so far. I'm really excited to have everybody. It's the perfect time of year to be having this workshop. Maybe everyone's thinking about their New Year's resolutions they've already made, or making some new healthy changes to start the year. So let's jump in. I know there are some new faces here today, so we will start by just talking a little bit about Sharp Again. I think some of you, this is the first time attending one of our webinars, so who are we? Well, we're a nonprofit that seeks to educate, empower, and support everyone to take an active role in optimizing their cognitive health. And we do this using a scientifically based multi-therapeutic approach. And our goal is to really achieve a world where dementia can be prevented, treated, and reversed, where everybody, really keyword everyone, has the ability to remain cognitively healthy throughout their lives. And so this webinar is one of the pieces of that. And so what are you going to hear about today? Well, we're going to start by just talking about what's normal aging versus what's cognitive decline and how to differentiate the two. And then what you can do now to stay sharp. What are the root causes of memory loss? We're going to mostly be focusing on the lifestyle causes and how you can change lifestyle habits to create prevention, but we will touch briefly on some other causes. And that's really what we talk about in many of our other deeper dive webinars. You can think of this as sort of the intro webinar, and many of our other webinars as the deep dive. And then finally, and I think most importantly, we want everyone to leave here with one or more action steps. The knowledge and information is valuable, but the part that actually helps our brains is putting the ideas and concepts into action. And so first, dementia is not normal aging. So what is normal aging? So normal cognition as we age is where there's really no detectable changes in cognition through testing. You might notice a little bit of a change, thinking, oh, a decade ago, maybe I was a little sharper in this way or that way. But nothing would show up on the testing. And normal aging really includes simple forgetfulness, a delay or slowing in recalling, names, dates, events. We all have that. Trouble finding a word in a conversation, the kind of it's on the tip of my tongue effect. A little bit of a slowing in processing information, learning, or problem solving. You might have a little bit more of a challenge multitasking. And all of that is really can be considered normal aging. Our memory processing begins to slow down, starting at age 30. And we'll have kind of a good graph to show on the next slide to show the differences. But what is not normal aging? So once things that aren't normal aging, or how do we know it's not normal aging? Well, in subjective cognitive impairment, which would be sort of the first step of cognitive decline, is with brain changes that still might not be measurable on a test, but something's not right. You might be you or a loved one might be regularly forgetting appointments or conversations, misplacing items, having trouble focusing, often forgetting names of family members or friends, might be struggling to complete some tasks. And at some point, there might be memory problems that interfere with daily life. Now, those problems wouldn't necessarily happen in subjective cognitive impairment, but they might start happening as we progress into mild cognitive impairment. So the real difference between subjective and mild subjective is, hey, I think something's not right. I don't think my brain is working exactly right. But other people might not notice yet, whereas mild cognitive impairment is sort of that next stage. It does show up on a test. You or your family member might be quite concerned, but you can still mostly do everything in daily life. But the key here is that it's detectable. And then finally, although there are many stages in dementia, but when it really transitions into dementia would be when the cognitive impairment is severe enough to interfere with everyday activities and everyday the activities of daily living. So what does this look like over time? So here we have a graph that has cognitive decline on one axis over time. And so normal aging is just characterized by this slight decline over time. In this preclinical, or this is kind of that subjective cognitive impairment, is a little bit steeper, and mild cognitive impairment would be a little bit steeper, and same with dementia. Now, the important thing to really recognize here is that being in one of these stages of decline does not mean that you're going to progress to the next one with 100% certainty or anything close to it. There are many things you can do to prevent, delay, slow, or stop any decline, and in some cases, even regain some of the function that you may have previously had. And so all of that really means that we want to switch to a prevention mindset. It used to be that there was nothing, you'd go to the doctor, you'd say, hey, here are my symptoms, or you might get a test result back, and that physician might say, there's nothing we can do, just go home, get your affairs in order. And that would kind of lead to a fear, denial cycle, or wishing it away, hiding it away. And we're lucky. We're lucky because now that's not what the science says. And the doctors who are up to date on the science would never tell you that. Although if that has been your experience, we do occasionally get people who've had that kind of conversation in the modern day. But you can really switch to the prevention mindset. We know many of the causes of memory loss. There is treatments to prevent slow its progression, and sometimes even reverse it. And transitioning to a prevention mindset is really the difference here. The earlier we get started, the better off we will be. So that's kind of a quick introduction. So let's take a break, just a breath for a second, and then we'll dive into some of the habits. And so some of you may have seen this worksheet or received this worksheet before. And if you haven't printed it off, just grab a piece of paper. We really just want to give you a space to brainstorm and just write down anything from this webinar. Like I mentioned at the beginning, the ideas and concepts are important, but really it's that action steps that we're going to take after this webinar. So grab that, and I really want to encourage anybody to just write down anything that they hear that they might want to make. Maybe it's not a change you want to make today. Maybe it's a habit you want to change 6 months from now or next year, just an idea that you think, oh, hey, that would be a healthy change for me. Just write that down and we'll sort through it at the end and see which ones might be a priority. All right. So, like I said, we're really focusing on the lifestyle factors for brain health here in this presentation. The first one, 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night is really important for your brain health. Now that is probably something you've heard before. One important note here is that that's 7 to 9 hours actually asleep. It's not just 7 to 9 hours in bed. So it's not including waking time or time to fall asleep. I know I have to schedule about 8.5 hours of time in bed in order to get just my 7 hours of sleep that I know I really need. The next one is a nutrition heavy, is nutrition. So that's really the brain healthy nutrition. The core concept, there's lots of nuance, but the core concept is a vegetable heavy Mediterranean diet. And then exercise, when we're talking exercise for brain health, it's a minimum of 180 minutes a week with the combination of aerobic or cardio. That's going to be anything that gets your heart rate up. It could be running, hiking, jogging, or dancing, gardening, if that gets your heart rate up. I know it does for me. And then so cardio, and then weight training. That's going to be anything that strengthens your muscles. Resistance training. If you think it's building your muscles, again, some of those activities like gardening might be doing that too, but we want to have some weight training in there to be building muscle. And then finally, stability and flexibility work, which is both directly good for our brain, but it also keeps us from having any injuries or falls that might get in the way of doing all these other healthy things for our body. If we fall, it's going to be harder to sleep and eat healthy and do other exercise. So that's really important. The fourth piece here is the mental activity. So I like to think of this as mental exercise. It's challenging our brain. Learn something new, learn a new skill, return to an old hobby that you haven't maybe done in a while, learn a new language, a new instrument. I think we kind of have all heard these things that are good for our brains. Additionally, brain training can be an effective tool. And then next is stress. So managing chronic stress. Short-term stress is okay, and that's not the type of stress we're talking about. When we have chronic stress that never goes away, we want to start managing that, either removing the stressors or learning stress management techniques. Meditation is one that has a lot of research backing and has many studies that show a positive effect on brain health. And then finally, in the lifestyle factors, is staying socially active or building out a strong social support network, or particularly now, after we've spent a few years in a tougher scenario with COVID of being social, it's been much more challenging. I think it's really common for me to have discussions around how do we reactivate that social network? How do we get back to seeing people? And I think many people have been doing that, but it has taken a lot more work over the last few years to be social and to see our friends, family, and loved ones. And one of the important pieces is reactivating that. So these are the lifestyle factors. We're going to dive a little deeper into many of these in a few minutes, but we just want everyone to have an overview of most of the preventable causes that we talk about. So there's those lifestyle factors, but then there's these, and we really dive into these in other presentations. Like I mentioned, there will be previous webinars on our YouTube channel and upcoming webinars on many of these topics over the next year and the past few years. So toxins can be in our food or water or air, and we really want to think about those in anywhere we spend a lot of time. So that could be work or home, or if there's another place where you spend a significant percentage of your time. Hormonal imbalances can have a big effect on cognition, particularly thyroid and sex hormones, but not limited to those. Inflammation from many different sources, including low-level infections, has a big effect on our brain health. And removing those sources of inflammation is one of the possible ways of improving your cognition. Heavy metal toxicity can have some pretty significant cognitive symptoms from that, or cognitive effects. That can be from things like mercury, lead, or other heavy metals. Trauma, both physical and emotional trauma, has a big impact on our brain. And so preventing those and treating those is important for brain health. And then finally, and I know Joan mentioned it in the disclaimer up front, but it's really important to just say here, medications can have side effects on dementia. And if we are going to make changes, they shouldn't be done alone. You really need to work with your prescriber on that or a qualified physician. No changes to medication should be made without consulting your doctor. Okay. So what can we do now? These first few changes are going to be focused on nutrition. Nutrition is a really big subject. So the first one is just eating whole unprocessed foods. This is a really good rule of thumb. That's going to include things like fresh fruits, a rainbow of vegetables and leafy greens, and really trying to reduce your dependence on processed foods. I know I personally use kind of a rule I thought of, or I heard many years ago of, 4 ingredients or less, or 5 ingredients or less on the label, that type of thing. But that's a rule that really helps us transition to whole foods and just healthier foods in general. And it's a nice, concise rule that makes it a little easier than picking and choosing. One thing I do want to say here is to start small. It's really valuable to start small when we're changing our diets. We've maybe been eating a certain way, using certain recipes, having certain ways of grocery shopping for decades. And so making small changes is going to be more sustainable and lead to better effects. Maybe adding in a vegetable side if that's not something you're used to, or one piece of fruit a day or something like that, rather than, hey, I'm going to overhaul my whole diet. Changing something as big as that, it's going to make it much tougher to have long-term sustainable change. And that's really change that lasts a long time. It's really what's going to have an effect on our brain, rather than just 1 month of doing everything absolutely correct. Second, sounds simple, but has a really big impact on many people. We see it in our small groups. It's a common habit, hydration. Many people sort of go through the world chronically dehydrated, and just the simple act of having some additional water and becoming hydrated can translate to some really positive changes. So what does hydration do? It delivers nutrients to the brain. It helps remove toxins. It can help balance mood and reduce stress. And so next is an overnight fast, really starting with 12 hours. And so 12 hours is much more achievable than maybe it sounds. If you eat at 6 or 7 and you stop eating at 8, and then you just don't eat until breakfast the next morning at 8, that's 12 hours. So why do we talk about an overnight fast as an effective tool for brain health? Well, the longer fast gives brain cells and the gut microbiome an opportunity for recovery and renewal. And that overnight fast improves insulin sensitivity. And then beyond those, it can just be a really effective tool for many people trying to make changes in their diet. If you are the type of person that maybe snacks throughout the night, has a dessert before you go to bed, those types of things, just saying, hey, I'm shutting off eating at this time, takes those decisions away. And it's an easy sort of trick our brain can use to remove some of those unnecessary snacks and desserts and foods and things overnight. But just the fast itself, beyond the calorie restrictions, has those benefits. So I'll take a pause here and just give anybody a chance, a few seconds, to write down any of these habits or any ideas. Okay. So moving on from nutrition, we're going to come back to sleep. So I know I mentioned this earlier, but let's talk about it a little deeper. So sleep is so valuable for the brain. Again, that's 7 to 9 hours of sleep. You really spend about 1/6 of the time you're trying to sleep, awake or not fully asleep. I found that to be true with sleep trackers. So like I said, I need about 8.5 hours to get in bed to get my 7 hours of sleep. But why is sleep so important? Well, poor sleep reduces our ability to clear toxins and plaque from the brain. And so there's this glymphatic system that helps remove waste from the brain. So what happens when we sleep is our glial cells kind of shrink and create some space. The cerebrospinal fluid comes up, kind of literally washes away the brain and clears away some of the toxins and plaques that are built up there. In fact, just one poor night of sleep has been shown to increase the amount of amyloid beta, which is kind of that hallmark molecule of Alzheimer's disease. And so getting good sleep to make sure that that detoxification system is just one of the many, many reasons why sleep is important, but it's really a relevant one to kind of preventing Alzheimer's, dementia, preventing cognitive decline. Another one is sleep is really where we do the memory maintenance, taking memory and putting into long-term storage, and then also removing some of the memories that we just don't need. You don't probably need to know a month from now what you ate for lunch last Tuesday. And that is an important part of maintenance that our brain does while we sleep. And so sleep can be complex for people. This is one of those ones that's simple to know what the goal is, but hard to implement some of the habits. So if that's something you're interested in hearing more about, please just ask the questions at the end. And I think we have several webinars on YouTube about sleep. Okay, so exercise again. I mentioned the basics on exercise. It's 180 minutes a week or more. But really exercise, we do all this research and we're always looking for the next best supplement or wonder drug or whatever, but really exercise is the closest thing we have to a wonder drug in medicine today. I hear doctors say that pretty regularly. And so exercise has many wonderful benefits for the body. It promotes strong flow of oxygen and blood support. It helps form new brain cells, and it can actually just have a direct effect on improving memory. And so again, the combination of exercise is cardio, weight training, and then some stability and flexibility work. So cardio really can be anything: running, hiking, biking, brisk walking, dancing, kayaking, anything that's fun. And then this is really the most important thing. I think finding the type of exercise that brings you joy and that you like and that you'll do is the most important part of determining what works well for exercise. People often get into this mindset of, oh, I want to optimize and fine tune and what works, what's better, what type of exercise is better for brain health. And really the answer is the one that you'll actually do. It's not just doing this particular circuit with weights or this, running is the best, so you should run. Another one that comes up a lot is pickleball. If you're playing pickleball and your heart rate's up, that's a good one. Stability and flexibility is definitely a part of that. You're exercising a lot of muscles that'll keep you from falling in the future or just keep you from getting injured. So there's a wide range of exercises. And then, like I mentioned, weight training is important as well. So number 6, challenge your brain. The brain develops new neural connections when we are doing something new with our brain. I think you can kind of think there's this feeling in your brain you kind of get when you're pushing it a little bit to do something new. It's just maybe not as easy. That's the feeling we're looking for. And that might be learning a new language or learning a new instrument are kind of the classic, really powerful examples. But it could be as simple as re-engaging in an old hobby that you like to do, taking classes, anything that's really pushing your brain to learn new things, to do new things, both, information wise, like think new thoughts, but also do something new with your body. Like if you are taking a dance class, that falls into this category as well. And, why do we do this? On one hand, I already mentioned, it helps create those new neural connections and some really good neurochemicals in our brains that help maintain our brains, but also challenging our brains over the long term helps us build something called cognitive reserve. And cognitive reserve is really one of the most important things that helps protect us against cognitive decline. So what is that? Cognitive reserve is kind of this ability of our brain to learn to do something in a new way. If we have a little bit of cognitive decline and we lose the ability to do something, if we have a high level of cognitive reserve, then our brain will just find a new way. It'll adapt to that change and find a new way to accomplish a task. So again, challenging our brain, kind of the one thing I haven't mentioned in this, although I mentioned it earlier, is brain training. Brain HQ in particular is probably the best, most well-researched platform for that if you're interested. Okay. I'll just take a quick pause. This has been a lot of information. Maybe take a breath and just write down anything that's been knocking around in your head that you might want to come back to later. So for these last ones, you mentioned it, but socializing is really an important piece of using our brains, on the just pure scientific side, where our brains, a huge portion of our brains is dedicated to social interaction. Think of all the different things, speaking, listening, determining emotions, all these different things that our brain uses. And so if we're not having a high amount of social interaction, then we're just simply not using a huge part of our brain, which goes back to number 6, the challenging your brain. If we're not socializing, we're just not using all of these things that our brain is built to use. And social isolation has been strongly linked through studies to developing dementia. Social isolation is one of the more negatively impactful things on our brain health. But then beyond, that's the kind of cut and dry science. But socializing also does all these good things for our brains, being around family, having joy with other people, friends, doing fun things. These are incredibly important things for our brains and just quality of life. Overall, the socializing improves quality of life, having a robust community. All of these things really directly feed into our brain health and just make life a little richer. And sort of the better life we're living today, the healthier our brain will be tomorrow. All right. So managing stress. And again, we're talking about the chronic stress. So chronic stress, the stresses that never goes away, has a negative impact on our brain health. It can lead to problems like high blood pressure, weight gain, headaches, anxiety, maybe some digestive issues, insomnia. It might be a little different for everybody, but it can have a wide range of impacts. And so we really want to remove that chronic stress, reduce that chronic stress. And so you can kind of think of, there's sort of 2 categories of stress. On one hand, there's the stressors that we might be able to change. Things that we can go away. Maybe we're overwhelmed at work and we can have a conversation or get a few things done, have a conversation with our boss to remove the amount we have to do to make it so that work plate or is no longer a chronic stressor. And so with that category of things, the things we can remove, we want to do the best to get those stressors to go away. But the reality is that there's many stressors that we can't change, or at least can't change in the short term. Maybe there's family stressors, health issues, anything that's kind of in that category where in the short term, medium term, long term, we don't think we're going to be able to change it. Well, then we need to start working on how we interact with those events and reduce the stress that we have. So that's finding stress management techniques like meditation has a lot of research backing for cognitive health and reducing stress. But it could be many different things. Many people find exercise to be a good stress management technique, or just going for a walk outside, getting into nature. It's really a trial and error thing to find which stress management techniques work best for you. But in both of these cases, it's really important to reduce that chronic stress and really try and remove or reduce the stress we get from those things we can't change. All right, so number 10, I mentioned this a little bit, or number 9, don't delay, start now. Like really starting today, starting as early as possible is one of the best things we can do for our brain. The earlier you make changes, the better. Earlier means more time to make a difference. You might even consider talking to your kids or grandkids about brain health and just putting some of these things into their minds as healthy things you can do for your brain, and that these impact long-term health. So starting today, and that's really why we have that worksheet with changes you might want to make, because our goal is really to help everyone put these ideas into action and make positive change for their brains. And then finally, we want to start now, but we want to start now and create that long-term sustainable change. We want to break these changes down into small habits. These 10 things, while they might sound, some of you might feel, oh, I'm doing great on them, or they might sound like things or they might sound like a lot. We're really, from 1 to 10, we're talking about most of the major parts of health in life, exercise, what you eat, how you sleep, socializing, stress, all these different pieces. This is a lot. And so not trying to take on all of this change at once. It's one of the most common mistakes we see in our small groups, or I see with clients, of trying to make, coming in with an attitude of, I want to change my whole life and I want it to happen and I want to make all these changes now. That can lead to sort of overwhelm and cause trouble in keeping those changes going long term. So we want to focus on smaller habits. Might have big goals, but break those down into action steps. Choose smaller changes to make now. If you want to change your whole diet, you might start by just saying, hey, I want to eat 1 or 2 more salads a week, or I want to add this vegetable side. I want to add a side of vegetables to my dinners during the week, rather than I'm going to totally change my whole life, kind of thing. So with that, I've already kind of previewed the next step, which is to take that brainstorming set of changes that we've done throughout this whole webinar. Hopefully you've been writing everything down that you might want to change, or habits you might want to try. And the hope here is to really start by setting a goal for ourselves. By setting a goal for ourselves. And so what is your major health goal for, and pick a time frame. Maybe what is my major health goal for the next 3 months, or what is my major health goal for this year in 2023? Think of something that you might want to change. And it might be as simple as, I want to sleep 7.5 hours a night. That's my big goal for the year. Or I want to eat a more vegetable heavy diet, or I want to get up to that 180 minutes of exercise. Those are specific goals. So we want to make this specific and realistic. If you're familiar with SMART goals, I won't dive into that, but think of all those elements of SMART goals. And really just, I'll give everyone a few seconds to write down a goal, to think about that. I gave pretty specific ones, but it might also be something more fun than just something specific. Maybe it's, oh, I want to be able to, pick up my grandkids or run around with my grandkids. Like, those joy sparking goals are important, and they're just as specific and realistic. So I'll wait another few seconds here to give everyone some time to think about it, what their overarching long-term goal might be. And don't worry about the action steps yet. We're going to break down a few small steps to get there. Okay, so now we've got our goal. I'll just say my goal is I want to exercise. I want to get up to that 180 minutes of exercise. So my action steps for that might be, okay, I want to start by going on one short brisk walk on Mondays for the next few weeks. And second action step might be, well, I know I've got those weights in the closet. I want to dig those out. And it can be as simple as, I know I've got those weights in the closet. I want to dig them out, and I just want to set them in the family room by the TV so that when I'm watching TV, I see those weights. You don't even have to think as an action step, I want to use them yet. And then maybe the third action step is, I've really been loving pickleball. I want to message, I want to give my friend a call who I know does that pickleball tournament every week. And I want to go with them to the next one. Just really simple, doable things that get you towards your goal. And they can be as small as that, or you can make a little more expansive, maybe building a habit. But I really encourage everyone to just pick 1 to 3 things that'll get you rolling towards that larger goal. All right. Give everyone a few seconds just to write down what their action steps might be. And while you're doing that, a really powerful tool can be to think back to your goal and say, what would my life be like if I was able to make these changes in these areas? What envisioning yourself having made that change, maybe thinking, I am exercising in the example goal, I am exercising 3 hours a week. I've got more energy. I can, all my daily tasks are a little bit easier because I feel a little stronger now. I can lift up my grandkids. I can walk up how might your life change? And then thinking the converse, if I don't make these changes, what might my life be like? Okay. And if you feel, if you want to, we would love to hear, if you just wanted to put in the chat, one of your, maybe your goal or an action step, whatever you want to share. It's always really fun to see what other people are doing and what other people are thinking. So if you could just put that in the chat, I would love to see that. Okay. And then, one of the pieces here is, do you think you would be more likely to make these changes with the help of a small group atmosphere with support? And so that's really why we have built our Stay Sharp coaching programs. So these are small group coaching programs. They're 6 group coaching sessions focused on implementing lifestyle habits and changes. And the coaches are health and wellness coaches who are very experienced in brain health. And you get 2 one-on-one coaching sessions. So everybody's brain health journey is individualized. And so in order to make a plan for you, get to know your coach, it starts with a one-on-one coaching session, and then you have 6 group coaching calls, and then a final one-on-one session. And the goal of these sessions is really to provide a little bit of education and a large amount of support, and just give you the coaching that'll help you implement habits in your life. included in these programs is a cognitive assessment. You don't have to take that, but it is an optional add-on that a lot of people take advantage of. And so what are other people's experiences in these coaching programs? So I'll let you read through this, but I think the highlight here is the person who gave us this testimonial already thought that they were a healthy person. I remember they were doing a lot of these good things, but the program helped them focus more on the things that could impact their memory and helped really find all the different pieces, like eating greens and salad, reducing stress, and finding consistency in their exercise that maybe weren't to the level that they wanted them to be. And then another comment, you get a taste of everything, you get the chance for it to sink in, and then that you use that knowledge to make effective changes. And I think that's really a nice summary of what these programs are for. We're seeking to give everyone the chance and support to make these big changes, because we know that it is overwhelming. That's one of the main conversations we have often, is how to combat the overwhelm of how many changes you need to make. And that is overwhelm that people are having even within a supportive environment. And so you might be asking, okay, when are these programs? So we've got 3 programs coming up. We have one starting in a few weeks here, January 31st, Tuesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And then 2 more early this year, one on that starts February 23rd, that has their group sessions at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then finally, one that starts in April, that's on Fridays at noon Eastern time. Now, the coolest part of this, in my opinion, one of the coolest parts, is that the program is only $79. We make it really hard. If you think back to that mission at the beginning, it's our mission to make this kind of support, the information in these webinars, but the programs too, available to everyone. And so we've worked hard to deliver these programs at $79. It is about a $450 value per participant, but we only ask for $79 to make it accessible to everyone. All right. So I'll give everyone a chance to read. And Joan, I think you had something to say.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that due to an increasing demand of our coaching programs in 2022, we have mapped out and planned our 2023 schedule. So there will generally always be at least 3 programs open for registration throughout the year. We are testing out different days of the week and times of day. Our February program is allowing an individual from Australia to participate because it's 4 p.m. here in the Eastern US, and it will be, I think, about 7 a.m. in Australia. So offering these at different times will open up the opportunity for many. One thing that many participants mention is the developing relationships with their co-participants and maintaining those relationships as they move on after with their plan to achieve their goals that they set during the coaching program. We hope if you have any questions, please reach out. You can email us at info@sharpagain.org. And I will include links to more information about these programs and to the registration pages. And you'll have my email address if you want to reach out directly.
Thank you, Joan. Yeah, and so I think the one piece we maybe didn't really highlight, even though it's on the screen, is the program's really for people who are looking to preserve their cognition, or maybe are in that role of, oh, I'm just starting to notice some memory lapses, and to take a more active role in enhancing your brain health. And I really do think that probably one of the biggest values people have is just being in a group of people who are experiencing something similar, concerned about a similar thing, and making changes together. Obviously, I, as a health coach, think the health coaching is really strong, but if I really think that the support from other participants is probably one of the most powerful pieces. So beyond that coaching program, I've mentioned a few times we have upcoming webinars on other topics. So we have a webinar on titled "The Curiosity May Have Killed the Cat, but It's Great for Your Brain," which I love. And it's kind of focusing on that challenging the brain piece. And then that's on February 8th at noon Eastern time. And then the next one is Better Food Equals Better Detox. And that's kind of the follow-up webinar to one of our previous ones on detoxing, and so, or on toxins. And that one's on Wednesday, April 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern. So I would hope I see many of you at both of those. And those are, just so everybody knows, typically these Brain Health 101s are presented by our health coaches, but when we have one of these deep dives, we go out, find an expert, and it's usually an expert physician or somebody else who's an expert in the field giving these webinars. Next, we have our Awaken and Energized meditation program. So these are free virtual mindfulness programs to practice to de-stress, rejuvenate, and recharge your brain. We have them every Wednesday morning, February 1st through March 29th is the upcoming program. And they're just a quick 20 minutes, 8:30 to 8:50 Eastern time in the morning. They're wonderful. Myra and Vibu are the facilitators for this upcoming one. So I encourage everyone to sign up for that. And then finally, you can go to our website for more information, sign up for our email list, although I'm guessing many of you are already on that since you found your way here. We would love anybody to join or refer someone to our programs. Finally, if you or anybody you know would have the ability to donate, that's really how we keep these webinar programs alive. If somebody wants to become a program sponsor for our webinars or make a donation to the small group program, we work really hard, as you can see, with that $79 cost and the $450 value to keep these things free or very affordable so that they're accessible to everyone to have this information and make changes to impact their own brain health. All right. So that's it. Information. Now is your chance to ask questions. I don't know if I haven't had a chance to look at the chat.
There are a lot of questions in the chat box.
I'll try and be efficient at answering them so we get through them all. Okay. Joan, if you want to ask them so that I know, since you
Sure. So if you take sleep medication, do you still get the same quality of sleep?
So good question. I won't comment too much on medications, and I'll just say what I hear, what the sleep researchers always say. I have no idea what medication somebody might be on, but typically the sleep researchers talk about sedation isn't sleep, so doesn't have the same impacts as sleep. So some medications might not be as creating as effective sleep as just natural sleep.
And does napping during the day help? Is that?
That's a great question. So napping is a really common one. This is a really personal thing. So napping, it totally depends on one. For some people, napping might be a negative thing because you are reducing your sleepiness amount. So there's a chemical called adenosine that sort of creates that sleep pressure. And so a nap is reducing the amount of adenosine you have. So a nap might be making it harder to fall asleep at night. So if you're having trouble falling asleep at night and you're taking a nap, then maybe that's not the best. thing to do, and try not taking that nap to see if you sleep better. But for other people who aren't having that trouble falling asleep, a nap can be a really effective way to get that additional rest, that additional sleep that their body is needing. It's personal, can go either way.
On fasting. So if you have a beer at 9 or 10 and breakfast is much less than 12 hours later, does that negate your fast?
It does, unfortunately. Yes.
Okay.
Alcohol and the carbs in a beer would definitely be a fast breaking activity. Also, just because it came up, a beer, alcohol close to sleep, just so you know, many people probably know this just from personal experience, if not the science, but alcohol close to bed does also disrupt your sleep.
Okay. Someone asked about turning on closed captioning, and I didn't see that. So next time I will remember to do that. Oh. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
How does multitasking affect the aging brain? Any idea?
It's one of the forms of challenging your brain that we talk about, but I'm not sure I have much knowledge on anything deeper than that. Sorry.
What about those with disabilities like hearing and macular degeneration, which leads to limited social interactions?
Yeah.
Closed captioning might help with that hearing.
Yeah, so we'll definitely turn on the closed captioning for next time. I think, finding ways to be social, there's often, groups or finding other people who are experiencing different things. Or hearing aids is one of the really important things to enabling hearing, to reducing that social isolation that can be caused by hearing impairment. That's the extent of my knowledge, but I am very empathetic that the hearing loss can create a significant social barrier.
Jacqueline recommends an article in the New York Times today that talks about how to remain and promote being social. That does not have to involve loved ones or long interactions. So I will include the link to that in my email tomorrow, that will go out later today or tomorrow. Has it been substantiated that many years of poor sleep contributes cumulatively to poor memory and or dementia?
I have seen some research to that effect, that sleep at during different decades of your life can be more associated with cognition or cognitive decline. Mm-hmm. Yes, so sleep throughout life is important, but that's one thing I didn't mention. That's the changes in your brain that are happening that are the disease process of Alzheimer's are shown to start up to 20 or 30 years before symptoms begin. And so it's a long process. It's not kind of that, I've got dementia now. The mechanisms, which aren't completely understood, but we can at least detect the changes that happen in Alzheimer's up to 2 or 3 decades. So.
And then several people shared what they're going to focus on. Robert is going to focus on hydration, sleep, and fewer processed foods. He's been working on that one a while. Eating more green vegetables, raw and cooked. Yes. Less processed foods and sweets.
I see a few more questions. How impactful are genetics? I won't dive too deep into genetics. There are genetic factors that have significant effects. ApoE4 is probably the most common. It has a significant impact. especially if you have 2 copies and it's a common genetic. There are other genetics that are much less common or have a smaller impact. But the important thing that unless you're the extremely rare person who has one of these genetic mutations that creates family dementia, your genetics are not determinative. They just make it, more or less likely that you might get it. It's not a guarantee that you're going to have dementia or Alzheimer's.
Our October webinar last year was about the APOE3 gene, 4 gene, I can't remember. And so I will include the link to that on our YouTube channel.
The pay in euros thing is a wonderful question that I'm guessing the answer is no to Joan. But, well, yes, the answer is yes.
Yes, yeah. I believe that exchange rate will be automatically factored in. You'll pay in euros, we'll receive it in dollars.
Yeah. How many people are in each small group? I'm going to rapid fire through a few of these. So if people are leaving at the top of the hour, they'll hear them. How many people in each small group? So typically it ranges on when they're filled, but 4 to 8. We cap it at 8. So they'll fill up with 8 people. And let's see, I just lost how many. Is there a cognitive test available on our website? No, we do not offer a cognitive test on our website, but we do offer one as part of the small group. Let's see, when can you tell us when the replay will be available? Typically, we send out an email within a day, right, Joan, the replay?
Yep. If not by the end of this afternoon, it will go out tomorrow morning.
Yes. Anything that I missed? The resources available to us that were sent in the chat going to be sent via email. And I'm guessing Joan is such a pro that I'm guessing the answer is yes.
Yes. Yes, they will. I will also include some of the suggestions and topics that came up, links to more information in that email.
Perfect. All right. If we missed your question, I don't think we did, but hopefully not. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Really exciting to have a good group for the first Brain Health 101 of the year. And as you take away from this webinar, make those little action steps that we made before we jumped into talking about our other programming. Just taking those small steps is really a wonderful way to start the ball rolling on a better brain health and achieving that longer term goal that you set. So thank you.
And if you didn't download those worksheets from the website when you registered, I'll also include those attached to the email just in case you want to print them out and keep them around, hang them on your fridge, and jot those things down.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. I think everyone enjoyed it and learned quite a bit.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. I hope to see you at a future program or webinar.
Thank you so much.
Bye now. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Oh my goodness, there's lots of people here. Bye-bye. Thank you.